Comic Book Savant, The List, Countdown. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode, we're going to be doing The List. In this particular list episode is going to be a countdown. And this is a funny story on how sometimes, after doing a podcast for 15 years, and you always wonder or pose a question to yourself where you run out of things to talk about. But the comic book industry has evolved so much from the time I started this until where we are now that I come up with ideas for episodes at the most random of times. Granted, in this case, I was walking around the house. I think maybe I just came out of the bathroom, washing my hands, and I was like, this would be a cool idea for an episode. So what I came up with was my favorite industry interactions or encounters / meetings, et cetera, et cetera. I was thinking about convention season. We're running into that time that we normally would have conventions, at least for right now, for this year, with us still being in the midst of a pandemic. Things are starting to kind of trend upward that we might be pulling out of this. So maybe not this year. We'll have a mix maybe in certain places, but a lot of conventions we're already starting to see that they're already announcing for 2022 that they're going to be having, crowds, back into and have their conventions back to normal. So I thought, hey, this would be a cool kind of episode to put in right now, just reminiscing about comic book conventions. And I know a lot of us that have, if you've ever had a chance to go to a comic book convention, it's an experience like none other for you being a comic fan, having that experience. So I wanted to do a countdown of my favorite meetings that I've had, mostly at comic conventions. Some were at specialty one-off shows and etc. But I'll get into that as the episode goes on. So this list is in no particular order. I'm just listing some of my most memorable experiences and give you some back context to some of these interactions that I had. First and foremost, the first one on the list is I had a chance to meet Dan DiDio and Jimmy Palmiotti, and one of the weirdest, I think, out of all of this, probably next to one more person on this list, one of the most weirdest but funniest interactions that I had. I don't think I ever even directly spoke to them. I was at Heroes Con one year. I started the podcast in 2006. It might have been 2006, 2007, because I think I went to Heroes Con back-to-back years, because at the time I was living in North Carolina. Heroes Con was in Charlotte, roughly like an hour and a half away from where I lived, so it was really convenient for me to go. So I went, I think, from maybe 2005 to 2008 or 9 consecutively, those 4 years or so. But one of the years, I was in the elevator going from the top part of the convention down to the convention floor. It was an elevator. And I think I had walked a long way. At this time, I was, I'm still a pretty big guy, but I'm not as big. So I'm like sweating bullets, and, I got a towel, pulling out a towel, and like kind of mopping off my head, bald head, big black guy in the elevator. And they walk on the elevator, and they I think I'm looking forward, and because I think it was a dual-sided elevator, so they came in the part where they would have seen the back of me, and I was like, man, that's a big dude. Like, yeah, like he's really big. So their whole conversation on the way down was about me, and I'm realizing, and if you've never heard Dan DiDio speak, he has a very prominent voice that is very distinct to him. So I turn back and I look, and it's like, hey, and I'm like, I think I said, all I said was like, hey, how are you? I didn't want to freak out and fanboy out so much. But they keep having this conversation behind me till the elevator goes down, and they're like, okay. And it's like, okay, big man. And I was like, all right, and all I could muster was like a wave and like a dumb grin. And they just kind of chuckle and like get out the elevator, and I look and feel stupid. So that was one one time I had interaction with Dan DiDio and Jimmy Palmiotti. Next interaction, probably one of my favorite interactions because I'm such a huge fan of this person, was I had a chance to uh, meet Tim Sale at Heroes Con. I've always loved Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's collaborations, The Long Halloween, especially Dark Victory, so on and so forth. Superman for All Seasons, which is probably hands down one of my favorite Superman stories of all time. Um, I waited in line at Heroes to get him to sign a copy of My Long Halloween. I don't know if I had even ever seen Tim Sale before, and had a chance to stand in line and get a chance for him to sign my book. And, you know, he was signing it, and I said, thank you so much. I'm such a huge fan. And he stood up and he shook my hand and he said, like, thank you so much. And I was like, well, what do you mean? You're Tim Sale. And I had seen this in the progression as I was going through the line, that was like all these fans that, had, bag and boarded comics and had like 25. One dude had like 50 comics where they didn't say anything to him. They just like shoved books in front of him to sign. So I guess they could turn around on eBay and sell them. And he was like, it's just cool to have someone really appreciate the work that you do and that you put in, and just not shoving books in front of your face that they're going to turn around and resell on the internet, that you're just a fan that just really appreciates what I do. And he was like, people don't realize that we spend all our time pretty much alone, for the exception because we're working so hard to put out these books, that we don't interact with a lot of people outside of our families, and we stay in our studios or office rooms for 10 to 12 hours a day, sometimes more. So just, it's cool to get something outside of a book being shoved in your face to be signed to resell. And that just really, I never thought about the flip side, and that's what opened up my mind on the other end of these creators that put these books together that we love so much, that it's the flip side, that they sacrifice a lot. So that's why, if you could tell by the way I review stuff, I never try to be so bullish or so negative towards anyone, because even if it's not the best book, to my opinion, I might not be the target demographic, and it took a ton of work and a lot of people to produce that one issue of that one comic. So I always try to keep that in mind. After that conversation I had with Tim Sale, it always hit home in a certain way for me, and it gave me a different perspective on the creative side of producing a comic book. Next one I would say is Matt Fraction. I had a chance to talk to Matt twice at Heroes Con. He actually, funny story behind Matt Fraction is that he actually lived in Charlotte for a while, and he worked for the comic store that puts on the Heroes Con convention in Charlotte. So the first time I met him was right when I'm blanking on the name of his original owned book. Casanova. When Casanova first came out, Image. No, he was that had kind of caught fire. He was at Heroes Con. It was a Sunday. This might have been 2006 or 7. Might have been 2007, I think, when I went that year. And I think I was there the whole weekend, because certain times, because it was only like an hour and a half drive, I would only go for a day. But 2006, 2007, I reached out to Heroes Con and got a press pass. So I had a table and all of that. So I was there for the actual whole weekend of the convention. So it was Sunday. Sunday's the closing day of the convention. It's not too much going on. A lot of people are like just closing down their tables and things like that. So it's really kind of like pack up day, and it's only like a half day, I think. So I was walking around. I happened to see him, and no one was around him. No one was talking to him. And I didn't prompt him for like a half an hour conversation, but we ended up having like a half an hour conversation, just because like he was, I'll never forget. He was, not even like behind his table. He was, I think he was on a skateboard, or he had like those shoes that, they would, like the kids would have, that would like the roll with the wheels that you can like, skate on them or whatever. But I think it was on a skateboard or something like that. and he was like literally this skateboarding around. And he was, next to like Tim Sale and stuff like that. He was probably one of the most down to earth people that I had ever met at that point. Especially in the industry, especially what he was destined for thereafter. But we just sat and talked comics, and he told me the backstory about how he used to work for them, and and Casanova was trying to get off the ground, at the time, and I think I forgot my issue of Casanova that I had. I had ordered it, and but I just forgot because I remember I saw him on the list, and I think I had talked about it or read it on the podcast or whatever. And he gave me an issue. He signed it for me. He gave me like some promotional stickers, and he just talked. And it was just amazing how just cool and down to earth, and how big of a fan of comics he was himself. Just to take the time and have the conversation with me, which was really cool. That same year at Heroes Con, this was funny. So the table right across from me, like I sat there the whole weekend. It was this big bald headed white guy, and his wife was there helping him, and they were super cool. I talked to the wife every day. I talked to him every day, but he was always so busy. He had that's the longest line, but in the mornings when we were coming and set up, he spoke. He was always, that's real cool, and his wife was always helping him anything he needs, kind of thing, and bounced around and try to keep the line in control. And she talked to other people around because he was always busy drawing. I never looked down because he was so busy to see what he was drawing. Now at the time, I was a big fan of the Moon Knight comic book that was out, and David Finch was the one drawing that book at the time. Needless to say, I had never seen at that point in time what David Finch looked like. So I think maybe after I left, I think I posted some pictures, and it was like, oh wow, that's David Finch. Who? You no. Then I looked it up on the internet, and I talked to David Finch and Meredith Finch at the time. She wasn't writing comics, of course. She was just around and just like helping him. Just being a good wife. Like she was just so cool too, and it was like so funny. And I think I still have a picture or something with him in the background. I think maybe my brother from another mother, Heath, is like in the background. This might be on the website in the gallery because I posted pictures from that year at Heroes. And you just see this long line behind him, and it was David Finch like directly across from me. Spoke to him like every morning, just, hey, what's up, dude? Crazy busy. Yeah, stay busy. Yeah, I'm stupid. I know. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Next on my list is Mike Norton. If you've ever read like Battle Pug, he's done work for Marvel. Mike is done work for DC. He's done work all over the place. Worked for Image, was created our own Battle Pug book. Met him at Comic Geek Speak 300 episode get together. Broke bread with him. Again, another just mammoth of a man. He tall. I can't remember how tall Mike is, but I'm 6 foot and he towered over me. He just was a cool guy. Like I had gotten to know a lot of the Comic Geek Speak guys. They actually mentored me earlier on, in the process. A lot of cool podcasters, and that was the one thing about the community. We all were kind of cool and helped, each other when we were all starting out. We it was integral and vital for us to grow, because if somebody came out a little bit before you and kind of learned something, they were always freely readily available to want to help you. So I knew them pretty well, and some of the artists and stuff that came for CGS 300 were around them. I was there a little bit early, so I helped the guy set up and stuff. So I got a chance to really meet him and get comfortable with him. So we were all like out, eating. It was the show was in a mall at the comic book shop. All the Comic Geek Speak guys met at. We had to get together there, so it was a mall close by. Cheap eats, a Mongolian barbecue. So like we ate there that whole weekend for the get together. So sat and just like talked to him, and again got more insight on an artist's perspective of how difficult it is to break into the business, make a living in the business, and what an artist goes through. And he was just like the gentlest giant that you would ever want to meet. Just really really cool dude. So loved meeting Mike, and I met him other times at different, because I went to a couple of Comic Geek Speak events, but that's the first one I met him at. I seen him at another one as well. Oh, I forgot. Back to the Matt Fraction thing. Let me skip back to Matt Fraction. I met him the following year at Heroes Con once Casanova blew up, because I told you it was two meetings. Once Casanova blew up, he was working for Marvel doing Iron Fist at the time, and how different it was, where I saw him on a Sunday with nobody around him, and then the second time I saw him, he was at a table at the Marvel booth with I think it was Brian Michael Bendis, Mark Wade, him, and it was somebody else. But I digress. Back to the list. But I did tell you it was two meetings. I did meet him twice. And I think I didn't get him to sign anything the second year, because I'll never forget the omnibus for the Iron Fist came out, and it came out like the week before Heroes Con, and it was sold out, and I hadn't received mine in the mail yet, but I did get a chance to talk to him, and it was just cool seeing, and I was saying, damn, what difference a year makes, and he just laughed, and he was like, yeah, beyond my wildest dreams kind of situation. So back again, Mike Norton, one of the coolest guys ever. Another person I met at CGS 300 that I love, and he's probably one of my favorite artists, and because I love his art style, and it's just Freddie Williams the second. He does a ton of work for DC. You primarily have seen him as the main artist doing the Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series. He's done like he did like the He-Man and the Thundercat stuff. He has a style that's a throwback to those cartoons, and the visual style of them. I was introduced to his work through his work at DC on Robin with Adam Beecham writing. Phenomenal run. And he was working on that at the time that I met him. And I've met Freddie multiple times, multiple places, Heroes, if I'm not mistaken, Heroes, a couple of CGS events. I have a sketch of his. I think I have a picture of it in the gallery too, on the website. I bought one of his like sketch books that he had like in a comic form. I still have. It's some of the few physical comics I have are some of the stuff I have signed from him, and the sketches that I got from there. Unfortunately, side note, when I was getting rid of my physical comics, I wasn't paying attention, and I sold that copy of The Long Halloween that Tim Sale signed for me. I was getting rid of them, but I wanted to keep that, and I had multiple copies, and I ended up selling it. I regret that to this day that I sold that copy. It was a beat up as hell copy, but it was still my copy signed by Tim Sale to me, that someone bought, that someone has to this day, that they bought on eBay. But what can you do? But Freddie Williams second, I love him. At some point I have this commission that I want him to do so bad, and I talked to him about it. And I think he priced it for me years ago, and I never pulled the trigger on it, because I was just like, where will I put original artwork? And really now, I have even less space than I did then to frame it and put it up, because I would have to frame it and put it up. But someday I'm going to reach out to him and see if I can finally get that commission done, and if I have the money to pay for it. Next on the list is Rosario Dawson. If you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, I have told the embarrassing story. This is probably next to the Dan DiDio and Jimmy Palmiotti whole situation in the elevator, probably the most embarrassing situation I had, because I think this happened. I was at Heroes Con early a Saturday morning one year, and I see this woman in the distance. It's like, the walkways are like super, long, and it's vendors and stuff on both sides going far as I can see. And Heroes Con is a fairly decent sized convention. It's no, San Diego Con, but it's grown, and it's a pretty decent sized show. And I just see this, I just look up and I was like, damn, that's a nice looking woman. And I was like, she really looks familiar. And we just keep walking, and I think she had like a sweatsuit on, but I think she had her hair up, she had her hoodie off, with like a fitness kind of shirt on, and it wrapped it around, like tied around her waist, like and she gets closer and she gets closer. I think she has glasses on, which I didn't know she wore glasses, and she's just like scrolling around. And as she gets closer, I start, I was like, that really looks like Rosario Dawson. But no, I'm at a comic book convention. Why would she be at a comic book convention? Mind you, this is way before the Netflix, Marvel shows. This is around the time of Clerks 2 and I want to say Men in Black 2, somewhere around that. So she was already in movies, but not on the trajectory that she kind of took off thereafter. And she gets closer and closer. I'm like, I really think that's her. Oh my God. My God. That's Rosario Dawson. She gets closer and she gets closer. And it's nobody like on this, like it's like super early. Like the convention floor had just opened up. But I think it was the year that I had a table. So I was there early because I had to set up, and you had time to kind of walk around after you set up. And I swear to you, I couldn't talk. She got closer and she kept making eye contact with me, and I flat out slobbered out my mouth, y'all. Like this slobber coming out the side of my mouth. I was like, yeah. She's like, hey, and I was like, that's what I said. That's what I said to Rosario Dawson, and she looked at me and smiled the way she does, and she just like chuckled, and I that what slobber coming out my damn mouth. True story. Yeah. Can't take that one back. No cool points for me. Next on the list, got a chance to meet Laura Martin, which was really cool. It was the last year that I went to Heroes Con, which probably I think was 2008 or 2009. It was a blur because it was so easy to go. I just went, even if it was just for the day. When I went, and Laura was doing like a cool presentation about being a colorist and using computers to do color work. And she was just like explaining her job and showing like these videos that she put together, which was really cool because I'm trying to see, as far as colorists at that point, I had met Maury Hollowell, which was one of the coolest dudes. I met him through the CGS guys going to their different things. If you don't know who Maury is, he was the guy that he did a lot of work for Marvel, and he colored Civil War. He had, though that book was majorly delayed, it was not due to the lack of him trying. Steve McNiven just took a long time with his artwork, but he was a colorist on that book. So I had met him and had talked to him a few times at the CGS events, but he was like the only colorist I knew. And we, he just was a really cool dude. We talked comics more than we, I talked about the process of. So it was really cool, her explaining to people and trying to get people interested in that part of, comics, of being a colorist. So it was really cool. She was super nice. Yeah, that was very eye-opening just on that process of what a colorist does and the work that they put in, and how pages look when they get to them, and how they look colored, and the digital, between digital and hand coloring of books. It was like, that was really dope. So that was really memorable, and just how super nice. And all these people I said were super nice and down to earth, besides the next situation, which I'm going to talk about probably, which was the most jarring of any experience I had of meeting someone in a potentially negative way. So we all know that I love Dick Grayson, Nightwing, all of that. So the original Nightwing series was written by Chuck Dixon for maybe like the first 50 issues or so, and drawn by Scott McDaniel. Loved his artwork, loved his art style, was a huge fan of his. I had a chance to meet him maybe 2005, 2006. No, it was earlier. It was the first time I ever went to Heroes Con, when I told you guys about the story about me working on a comic that I was gonna pitch. If you haven't listened to one of the last episode or two of Man Behind the not Man Behind the Mic, Got Questions, I told this story about me pitching books. I went to HeroCon one year, and I was going to pitch a comic, and I was pitching a comic to someone, and the person I was working with kind of left me high and dry. It's a whole thing, but I told that story. I digress. But that time I went to Heroes Con, I had a chance to meet Scott McDaniels, and he was really rude, and it was like such a big turnoff. I'm still a fan of his artwork. I just don't like him as a person because he just, I mean, I'm just gonna say he came off as a real dick. You know, I don't know him personally. He could have been having a bad day. I don't know. But I thought I met Carl Story, which was his inker at the time on Nightwing, and he was the total opposite. He was super nice and super kind. Yeah, but like I said, he could have had a bad day. I follow Scott for years. He's seems like a very cool dude. My interactions, you know, just like through following him on Facebook and stuff like that. He seems cool. Like I said, he could have just been having a bad day, so I don't, you know, charge him up over that. Just things happen. You don't know. You can catch a person at the wrong time. Next for me is just fellow comic book podcasters that I've gotten to meet over the years. This might seem cliche, but meeting Heath, meeting the Comic Geek Speak guys, meeting people like John Mayo that does the Mail Report, meeting Ian Levinstein and those guys that do comic timing, Derek Coward that does Comic Book Noise, which was one of the first people I ever reached out to next to the Comic Geek Speak guys that really helped mentor me in putting the podcast together when I was just planning it out before I ever recorded anything. Those were some of the best meetings I ever had. Heath, which I consider family, that I got a chance to meet, like one of the best meetings. Like I remember us like literally like crying the first time we met each other. And I remember when I first met Derek, because Derek's taller than me and a pretty decent sized guy, that I saw him and I think I ran across the floor at Heroes Con and I jumped into that man's arms. Yeah, that was funny. People looked at me weird, but I didn't care because Derek is like the coolest dude on the planet. And I love Heath with all my heart. Like I do, like he's like family to me through and through. And those are some of my favorite people like Peter Rios from Comic Geek Speak that I still, know and talk to every now and again on social media. My boy Jamie D'Alessandro from Comic Geek Speak that passed away from all things breast cancer for a man. Love that dude. He always was so kind to me, seeing him in person, seeing him on Facebook and just speaking. I miss him so much. My other friend Eric Martin, that was a part of our little crew of comic book podcasters, he passed away suddenly. Oh gosh, I can't remember how many years ago. Just people, so many great people that I had a chance to meet. He used to do with Ryan King, which is he's a phenomenal artist. They did a podcast called Comics Playground, where they did a whole podcast that centered on family friendly comic and talked and reviewed those. Love that podcast. That was such a fun podcast. Getting a chance to meet those guys. I've met so many good people that I still know and talk to this day. But I digress because I'll get emotional keep talking about that. Got a chance to meet Chuck Shatterly. He worked for Marcosia Comics. He was a writer as well. Had a chance to meet him. I have some trades and some comics signed by him. Met him at CGS 300 as well. Jamal Eigel, phenomenal artist that worked for DC. He's done so many things, so many different places. Just a great artist. I still have the issue from when I met him. It's a Firestorm issue that he drew that I still have. I just found all those signed comics and stuff. I have it somewhere, but it's a issue of Firestorm. I'll never forget it. I still have it bagged and boarded. He signed it for me. Great dude. Martheus Wade. Met him at CGS 300 as well. I met Jamal at Heroes Con. Met Martheus at CGS 300, and I got an awesome Oracle sketch that I know that's on the website. Talented artist, love him to death. Sean Pryor met at CGS 300 as well. And last on my list, because this is running long, Anthony Johnson. I met him online. He's the writer of the Wasteland series, and it was kind of crazy because, and this is probably one of my biggest accomplishments as a comic book podcaster, is that I didn't even know this existed. Someone that was a part of the community early on, what they used to call the cult of Anubis before it morphed in the Savant Society, because my username on the CGS message boards was Anubis, because I can't think of stuff, and that was just the first name that came to my mind. So they used to make the joke on the forums there that it was the cult of Anubis, my little corner for the podcast back then. And someone hit me up in my forum and told me that a quote from my show when I reviewed the trade, which was Wasteland's Book 1, Cities in Dusk. On the back of that trade, it had an excerpt from my review of the book, which I thought was really cool. And I think I reached out to him. He friended me on Facebook, and he just was really cool. It was a cool interaction because that's the first and only time I think that's ever been done. Any quote from anything that I said in relation to a book was quoted and then put on the actual as one of the blurbs on that trade. I don't physically own the trade anymore. I wish I did, because probably those original printing runs that probably if you got a newer copy wouldn't have it on there. So it's one of those things in time that I wish I still had a physical copy of. Again, that ranks up there with the whole Tim Sale signed copy of Long Halloween. But we're not going to talk about that. But that's some of the cool interactions that I had, and some of the cool people that I've met in the comic industry over the years that just really were, cool life-changing experiences that's super memorable that I take with me. I just wanted to share those with you, and I want you to share with me. Share. Email me, tell me a cool story. If you're comfortable with me reading it, I'll present it later on a future episode. I just thought it would be cool to kind of get back to that mind of the convention. I mean, we've had so much stuff going on in the world in the past year plus now, since the pandemic really hit full blown here in the States, and we're still adjusting to the new form, but hopefully life will be back to normal soon enough that we can all gather and hang out again and have fun, because it's nothing better than going to like a comic book convention if you have an experience that you need to. That's one of those comic fan bucket list things that you need to put on your list to do for sure. One of the things I wanted to gear up with before all this happened was to get to a place where I could start going out to different conventions and meet a lot of you guys in person that I haven't met already. And I still hope to do that at some point in the future. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode. As always, you can find me at comicbooksavant.com. If you have a moment, I would like to ask you to do one thing. If you've ever listened to the podcast and you've never left an iTunes review, if you can do that, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps get more eyes on the podcast over on iTunes. Again, I have a merch store, so if you want to support the show, you can head over to comicbooksavant.com. I have a link for the online store. It'll take you there. We got hoodies, we got t-shirts, we got stickers, we got more to come. I've been so focused on creating content, everything else is kind of fell to the wayside, because after I took that break, I just wanted to make sure I had plenty of content for you guys. So I've kind of lacked being a one-man operation. I've lacked in other areas. I'm gonna get around to designing some more merch, but it's some cool designs in there that I had a great artist help me come up with that are really cool. So definitely check that out. I think it's like 4 different shirt designs, so you can check that out. And if you want to support, you can also go over to patreon.com/comicbooksavant, and you could do that as well. But all the links to everything are on the website at comicbooksavant.com. I just want to thank you all again for your continued support of me and what I do. You guys stay safe, and until next time, you guys take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.